Trying to get this thing to set up right. There we go. That's better. Very, 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 very. I'm ready for bed. I don't know about y'all. Oh. Hope you're having a fabulous Tuesday evening. Just so you know, I now have the Twitch stream schedule up live. I'm ready to go. So that should be good. I wish I could make a copy of it. That way. Don't worry about it. No. Just gonna stay away from live again. I do have something I want to read to you guys first before I officially go live. Oh, I'm so tired. Everybody likes the boobies. Alright. I am super sleepy. Goodness. Hope y'all are having a good night. For those of you that have come live with me, I thank you. Dale, how are you? I hope you're having a good evening. Here shortly, I'll be reading my little book, but for right now, I gotta fix this. I'm gonna get some ASMR sounds here for a second. Sissy done messed with it earlier today, and now it's all jacked up. Yeah. Well. David, how are you? It's gonna aggravate me. I really wish she'd stop messing with stuff. She doesn't know how to keep her hands off enough. Oh, anyway. So. I don't know why it's giving me reverb. Oh. Let's see if we can pull up this stuff. Gosh. Are y'all tired? I'm tired. I have a feeling I'm not going to be able to stop yawning either. Wolfie! Ow! What did I cook? I didn't cook anything. Kids cooked. But yeah. They made or we made. I forget what it's called now. It's North Carolina, like brown sugar or something. I can't remember what it was called. I don't know. I can't remember. I'll have to go back and watch the video. Hope you're having a good night, though. I'm still trying to figure out what's going on with my stuff. Like every time I come out here, I mean, I knew that the laptop got moved, but my microphone keeps getting moved. And then I come out here after my 1 p.m. and my lights are on, and it's like, who's messing with my stuff? I don't think Bub's coming out here messing with it. We don't know. All right, I have a little special something for you guys tonight. I got, and hopefully I don't burn my leg. Oh, you're gonna have to bear with me. I am legit tired, guys. Legit tired, and I already turned my bed on. Just goes to show you how tired I am. Getting it all warmed up. I'll tell you what, last night was cold. Cold. If for those of you that have just joined, paranormal activity. I don't know, like there's a. I always wonder if people come in here like during the day when I'm not here or something, because um, stuff is always moved. But it's most likely just my kids. That's the shit. I don't really know how to keep their hands off enough, and it aggravates me to no end. I'm the type of person that if I put it down somewhere, if I put something down somewhere, I expect it to be there the next time I come back around to get it. Not, and my parents' house is the worst for it. So, not all over the place or moved in like a million different. Anyway, so should change the definition of dedicated to Eve. It's a possibility. Might do that. Tonight, I have a dedication going out to John Jarrell, who writes poetry. Well, songs, really. We're working on songs right now. And, oh, I told you, I like being watched. I know y'all are probably just like, I can't deal with poetry. Well, guess what? Here it is. All right. Let me get my glasses. What did I do with my glasses? I always end up moving them. Oh, they're right there. Exactly where I left them. Look at that. Amazing. Miracle. Anyway, enough of my ranting. Tell my mom. All right. And my love hangs from the trees. Out in desperate fields of remembrance, the pain pulses in my hurting chest as I flatline myself into the wings of happiness. A prisoner in the most inescapable prison, it happens to be my own fucking mind. Now, with the release of certain death, it is over, and I am finally free. Been waiting on this release forever. The days were dark and shined only black. No love ever touched or caressed me here. Only the frozen touches of one's playing games. I failed the trials and near tribulations. My dreams melt in the distant fires of hell. Emotions squirm in the madness of daybreak, making gentle tears into my glassed-in heart. The burning of stars expose the weakness upon. Many waves of torture as I see your damning face. Now, as I am in the release of death, it is over, and I am finally fucking free. These violent emotions carry me through. worshipping empty gods to their core, and as my breath chokes on this dirt of love, my heart bursts and ceases to burn on, to beat on. Sorry, that's one. There's the other one. Let me see if I can get my laugh together. Make sure it's working properly. There he is. For some reason, my live's not working right. Guess you need to go because you're only 17? You're silly. No, but I don't think your wife was going to want to hear me talking naughty to you. Hey, John. And to everybody else watching and listening, I hope you're having a good evening. Well, this is my stream. I guess I should put it dedicated to you. Because it is. I could go live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If I wanted to. Doesn't bother me none. We're all being watched by somebody somewhere, right? Privacy doesn't exist anymore. For some reason, unless I'm sitting wrong. Am I sitting in the wrong spot or something? I feel like this is all different. I feel like it should be. I don't know. I'm so crooked right now. Anyway, try to get comfy. Alright, no reverb. Enough of the reverb. So. Alright, let's see what else we got here. For some reason, it's just not. It's just being a pain in the butt tonight. Alright, what else we got? Alright. You ready? Got another one. The tears I cry soften the ground where I bury these memories. I can't hear your voice as you whisper these dead words. Your wings tickle my face before you even begin to fly. Holding you in my distant arms, you move against my touch. Our touch now fades and crumbles into a pile of dust. It's dirt used to bury feelings deep into forgotten eternity. The teeth of demons tearing at the fabric of love, knowing it will tear and break into many obsolete pieces. And these days will experience no day or night. Going forth, the apocalyptic horses will ride steady. These visions will shine and burn on in desperate words, spoken in times reigning before the lights burn out. Our deaths are chronicled in books with burnt pages, numbered and tracked into this divine universe. I am driven into the valleys of deep remorse, my prayers of redemption falling into the heavens, these hands clasped together as I say your name, asking for the relief of this damning hurt in me and this dark soil that hides me from the world. Bring me my release as the flowers rot day by day. I sound a lot better reading them than you do. I'm glad. Kind of. I mean, they're yours, so. But yeah, those are John Jarrell's. So definitely check it out. Um, he posts them on his Facebook all the time, and I always end up saving them. So I don't close it out. So, yeah. All right, ladies, gents, and everywhere in between. Trying to get it far enough away to where it's not going to aggravate everything right now. Hope you're having a good night. So, yeah. I gotta mess with you. Gotta keep it interesting. I don't know. I don't watch other streams that much, so I don't know what's on theirs, but I know what's on mine. A lot of nonsense. All right, let me see. Back. We're in chapter 9, I believe. I'm trying to get caught up to where was that. Did y'all do anything fun today? I know I did. I'm trying to see where I ended at. I don't remember. Oh well. We'll go back a little bit. If I overread, just don't mind me. Why can I not return to a time within my own past? If you are too close in proximity to your past self, one of you, either your past or your present self, won't survive. We have no way of foretelling which one lives. There have been times when neither survived. It seemed to stress the natural order of things, and nature struggles to correct herself. Then I'll choose a time in the past when I was across the border in England, Justin snarled, refusing to accept that Dagus was irrevocably gone. No one knew how far away is far enough, son. Besides, you're forgetting that we may never use the stones for personal reasons. They are to be used only for the greater good of the world, or in extreme circumstances, to ensure the succession of the Mkelter. One of us must always live, but these are not extreme circumstances. You know what would happen if you abused the power. The ear tingler. He knew. Legend handed down over the centuries claimed a Celter who used the stones for personal reasons would become a dark druid at the moment he passed through. Lost to honor and compassion, he would relinquish his very soul to the blackest forces of evil, become a creature of irreverent destruction. Trying to keep up with everything. Yeah. The hell with the legend, he thundered defiantly. But given him his grief, he'd known better. Whether or not the legend was true, he would not be the first Mkelter to trespass on such sacred territory. Nay, he would accept, and all his ancestors had accepted, and honor his oaths. He had not been given unfathomable power to abuse it, or to use it for personal gain. He couldn't justify using the stones to mend his own heart. If he had saved Diagus and became a dark druid, what then would he do when Sylvan grew ever older? Cheat fate again? A man could go crazy with so much power and no limits. Once he crossed such a line, there would be no turning back. he would indeed become a master of the black arts. And so he bid farewell to Digus and re-sworn his oath to his father. I will never use the stones for personal reasons, only to serve and to protect and to preserve our line should it be threatened with extinction, as it was now. Justin's hand ran Justin ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. Digus was dead. Sylvan was dead. He was the only remaining Celter, and his duty was clear. For 500 years the world had been unprotected by a Celter druid. He had to return to do whatever was necessary to restore a concurrent succession of the Celter, at any cost. And what about the price to the woman? Will, or no. And what about the price the woman will pay? His conscience chided. I have no choice, he muttered darkly. He plunged his hands into his hair and massaged his temples with the heels of his palms. I feel like I'm so far down now. Like, I don't know why. This is like I feel like the computer's like way further away too. I don't know. He knew by rote the formulas for the 13 stones, but he did not know the critical three, and the one that would specify the year, the month, the day. It was imperative that he return to the 16th century shortly after his abduction. Who, Whoever had lured him beyond the castle walls would not be able to penetrate the fortress of Castle Kelter, even with a full army, for at least several days. The castle was too well fortified to be taken easily. So long as he returned a day or even two after his abduction, he would still have time to save his clan, castle, and all the information within its walls. He would defeat his enemy, marry, and have dozen children. With Diagus dead, he finally understood the urgency Sylvan had tried to impart on his sons to rebuild the Celter clan. Justin, you must learn to conceal your arts from the women and take a wife, any wife. I was blessed with your mother. 'Twas a miracle and an uncommon thing. Though I wish the same for you, it's too dangerous to have so few Celter. He learned that the hard way. He rubbed his eyes and exhaled. He had a minuscule target at which to aim, and he'd never studied the symbols he now needed. He'd been forbidden to travel within his lifetime, so there had been no reason for him to commit to memory the symbols spanning his generation. Yet, in a dark moment of weakness and longing, he looked up to the ones that would have taken him back to the morning of Diagus's death, and from those forbidden symbols he could attempt to derive the shapes and lines of the three he needed now. Still, it would be a guess, an incredibly risky guess, with dire consequences if he didn't get them right, which brought him back to the tablets. If Sylvan had been able to hide them somewhere in the grounds before he'd suffer whatever fate that had befallen him, Justin wouldn't have to guess. He could calculate the symbols he needed from the information on the tablets, with no fear of error. He felt fairly certain that if he had returned to himself to the day after his abduction, the leagues between his future self and his enchanted body, coupled with the thick stone walls of the cave, would be enough distance between them. He had no choice but to believe that. Justin glanced around the ruins while he brooded. Full night had fallen, and it was too dark to conduct a thorough search, which left him tomorrow to hunt for the tablets and try to recall the symbols. And if the tablets weren't there, well, then that was why there was wee, sweet, unsuspecting Gwen. Wee sweet unsuspecting Gwen, perched on the hood of the car, munching celery sticks and salmon patties and absorbing the remaining warmth of the engine. She glanced at her watch. Nearly 2 hours had passed since she left Tristan at the ruin. She could leave now, just hop in the car, slam it into reverse, and squeal off to the village below. Leave the madman alone to sort out his own problems. Then why didn't she? Excuse me. Pondering Newton's law of universal gravitation, she considered the possibility that since Tristan's mass was so much greater than hers, she was doomed to be attracted to him. So long as he was her near, as long as, sorry, so long as he was in her near vicinity, as much a victim of gravity as the earth orbiting the sun. Lost in thought, she hummed absently as she idled on the hood, shivering as the indigo sky deepened to black cashmere, arguing with herself and reaching no firm conclusions. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was overlooking one or more critical facts that may help her figure out what happened to him. She'd never given any credence to gut instinct. She'd believed her gut controlled hunger and waste, nothing Gnostic. But in the past 36 hours, something in her gut had found a voice. It had it was arguing with her mind, and she was baffled by the discord. She had remained in the stones and watched him for some time before she sought the warmth of the hood of the car. She studied him with the remote candor of a scientist observing a test subject in an experiment. But her study of him had only revealed more contradictions rather than resolving any. His body was powerfully developed, and a man didn't get a body like that without extraordinary discipline, effort, and a mind capable of sustained focus. Wherever he had been before she'd found him in the cave, he'd lived an active, balanced life. He'd either worked hard or played hard, and she decided that it was more work than play, because his hands were calloused, and no stuffy jock-type aristocrat had calluses on fingers and palms. His silky black hair was too long to be considered opposed to a 21st century lord and gentleman, but it was glossy and well cut. His teeth were even and white, more evidence of care for his body. People who devoted attention to their physical health were usually healthy in mind as well. One moment. As Peter is like trying to. He walked with a gait that bespoke confidence, strength, and the ability to make hard decisions. He was reasonably intelligent and well spoken, his strange inflection and vocabulary aside. He hadn't known the way out of the cave, and he hadn't known the way out of the cave, and when they had emerged, Gwen hadn't missed a significance of the collapsed tunnel and the overgrowth of foliage. "Oh, Christ, they're all dead," he whispered. She shivered. The engine had cooled, and the remnants of heat gone. Occam's razor promulgated that the simplest explanation that fit the majority of the facts was most likely true. The simplest explanation here was he was telling the truth. He had somehow been put into a deep sleep 500 years ago against his will, perhaps via some lost science, and she'd awaken him by falling on him. Impossible, her mind exclaimed. Tired of trying to coax the jury to deliver a consensus, she reluctantly accepted the hung verdict and admitted that she couldn't leave him. What if the impossible was possible? What if tomorrow he offered her some concrete proof that had been frozen in time for nearly 500 years? Perhaps he planned to show her how it had been done. Some advanced cryogenics that had been lost over time. She wasn't vacating the premises if there was even a remote possibility of finding out such a thing. Oh, admit it, Gwen, despite having dropped out on the profession that had been externally crammed down your throat despite refusing to continue your research. You still fascinated by science, and you'd love to know how a man could somehow sleep for 5 centuries and wake up healthy and whole. You'd never publish it, but you'd still love to know. But it was more than just scientific curiosity. She suspected it had something to do with his sock and her eggs and the desire that she couldn't attribute solely to the mandate programmed into her genes that had clamored for survival of her race. No other man had ever incited such a response in her. Science couldn't explain the tenderness she felt at the sight of tears on his eyes, nor the desire she had to cradle his head against her chest, not to have her cherry once and truly plucked, but for his comfort. Yes, novel talk about cryogenic sleep. Hold on. Oh, no, I lost a page. Ah, kept it. Professional. Hold on. My hair is like in my face because I really am daylight saving. So I'm going to put it up in the most fashionable fashion. Good old pencil twisty thing. It's a pencil. Time out. Y'all gonna look at me like I'm nuts. Hold on. Oh, so fashionable. I'm just saying. Yep. I look like I'm getting stabbed myself. It's probably gonna fall down in 5 seconds. Yeah, there we go. So much better. It's like watching Christopher Nolan's movies. Well, luckily I don't know who you're talking about. You gonna be dissing on me now? I'll be a hater. You know, problem really. Staying. I don't know who Christopher Nolan is. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. I just drank something. With this damn heater, yeah, I'm gonna have to hydrate more often. It's ridiculous. Can't get warm, but sure enough, the air is dry. All right. Back. All right. Oh, her heart was engaged, and both alarmed and elated her. Tucking her bangs behind an ear, she slid off the hood and started up the hill. He had enough time alone. It was time to talk. Dresden? Gwen's voice cut like light through the darkness around him. He met her gaze levelly. The poor wee lass looked terrified, yet bristled with resolve. She looked directly into his eyes then, and if she felt fear, she rose above it. He admired that about her, that despite her misgivings, she forged on with the valor of a knight entering battle. When he chased her off, she worried that she might simply jump into her metal beasts and drive away. Wait, when he chased her off, he worried that she might simply jump in her metal beasts and drive away. The relief that he'd felt when he glimpsed her heading toward him through the stones had been intense. Whatever she'd decided to think of him, she'd resolved to stick by his side. He could see it in her eyes. Driston? Hesitated, yet firm. Aye, lass. Are you feeling better now? She asked. I have made a tentative pace at my feelings, he said dryly. Fear not, I do not plan to leap up and avenge the loss of my people. Yet. She gave him a brisk nod. Good. He could tell that she didn't wish to discuss it, and she'd rather just accuse him of being deluded when he was clearly distraught. She was going to scuttle around in it in some circuitous manner. He narrowed his eyes, wondering what she was up to. Driston, I memorized your poem. Now it's your turn to grant me a favor. As you wish, Gwen. Only tell me what you want of me. A few simple questions. I'll answer them in the best of my ability, he answered. How much dirt is in a hole a foot wide, 9 inches long, and 3.5 feet deep? That is your question? He asked, baffled. Of all things she may have asked. One of them, she said hastily. He smiled faintly. Her question was one of his favorite puzzles. His priest Nevin had agonized for half an hour trying to calculate exactly how much dirt would be in such a space before seeing the obvious. There's no dirt in a hole. Interstellar and Tenet? Or no, I never saw either one of them. I heard Tenet was like a backwards movie. I don't know. Oh, well, that was a trick question and doesn't tell me much. You may have heard it before. How about this one? A boat lies at anchor with a rope ladder hanging over its side. The rungs in the rope ladder are 9 inches apart. The tide rises at a rate of 6 inches per hour and then falls at the same rate. If one rung of the ladder is just touching the water, when the tide begins to rise, how many rungs will be covered after 8 hours? Sounds like a math question from class in high school. The answer is how many purple pancakes can you put in shingle roofs when an elephant who's polka dotted flies off the roof with an umbrella? Ta-da! There's the answer. That's not the answer. I'm just making this shit up. That's just what it sounds like, you know? Sorry. Anyway. Driston ran through a swift series of calculations, then laughed softly, at the time when he thought he may not laugh again. He suddenly understood why she had chosen such questions, as his regard for her increased. When the apprentice petitioned a druid to be accepted and trained, he was put through a similar series of problem designing to reveal how the lad's mind worked and what he was capable of. Nonetheless, the rope ladder rises with the boat upon the water. Do my powers of reason convince you that I'm not much mad? She regarded him strangely. Your reasoning seems to be untouched by your peculiar illness. So what is 4,732.25 multiplied by 7,837.50? Ask that question again. I'm good. Thank you. $37,089,9.375. Okay, this is just a stupid part of the book. The only part of the book I care about is the good part. Sorry. My God, she said, looking simultaneously awed and revolted. You poor thing. I asked the first question mostly to see if you were thinking clearly. The second one to see if you if the first had been a fluke. But you did that math in your head in 5 seconds. Even I can't do it that fast. He shrugged. I've always had an affinity for numbers. Did your question prove anything to you now? They had proved something to him. Gwen Cassidy was the most intelligent lass he had ever met. Young, seemingly fertile, an extraordinary mating heat between them, and smart. His certainty that fate had brought her to him for a reason increased tenfold. Mayhap, he thought, she might not fear him after tomorrow eve. Mayhaps there was such a love for him that his father had known. Well, if you're well, if you're a candidate for Bedlam, you're the smartest madman I've ever met, and your delusions seem confined to one specific issue. She blew out a breath. So what now? Come, Les. He held his arms out to her. She eyed him warily. Ugh, lassie, give me something to hold in my arms that's real and sweet. I will not harm you. She trudged to his side and sank down into the grass beside him. She kept her face averted for several moments, gazing up at the stars. Then her shoulders slumped, and she looked at him. Oh, brother, she said, and stunned by him reaching out to cradle his head in her arms, pulling him to her breast. He slid his hands around her waist and pulled her onto his lap. Lovely Gwen, just thinking you once again, I am. You are a gift from the angels. I wouldn't be so sure about that, she muttered against his hair. She seemed awkward holding him, as if she hadn't had much practice. Her body was tense, and she sensed if he moved suddenly, she would jerk away. So he breathed slowly and kept still, allowing her time to grow accustomed to the intimacy. I guess I guess this means that you won't be able to prove anything to me tomorrow, huh? As promised, on the morrow I'll prove to you my story is true. This changes nothing or little. Will you stay of your own volition? Perhaps help me explore the grounds some more. Hesitantly she slipped her wee hands into his hair, and he half sighed, half groaned with pleasure when her nails lightly grazed his scalp. I, Justin McKelter, she said, with a good with as good a lilt as any Scot lass. I'll be staying with ye till the morrow. He laughed aloud and pulled her closer. He craved her touch, wanted desperately to make love to her, but he sensed that if he pressed her now, he would lose the comfort of her embrace. That was fine. That was fine, lass. You're no Bamford, and I'm thinking we may be a wee dance Highland lass o' ye yet. This is my sad version of me trying to speak Scottish. Like Gwen slept the night curled in the arms of the Highlander, and in the field of siller shackles and gowan beneath a silvery spoon of moon, peaceful as a lamb. And Driston was feeling wolfish. He bid himself the content merely to hold her. Finally, chapter 9. I'm getting there. I do a good Scottish accent for a guy. Yeah, I think. September 21st, 10:23 p.m. They searched all day, but could not find the tablets. When the sky darkened to indigo, pierced by the glittering stars, Justin gave up and constructed a bonfire within the circle of stones so that he would have light in which to perform the ritual. If the worst occurred tonight, he wanted her to know as much about what had happened to him as possible, and her backpack would be an added boon. While digging in the ruins, he told her everything that had transpired just before his abduction. One, one disbelieving brow arched. She nevertheless listened as he explained how he had received a note bearing an urgent summons to come to the clearing behind the little loch. If you wish, take in the time the name of the Campbell who has murdered your brother. His grief fever hot, he donned his weapons and rushed off without summoning his guard. And they knew it. You should remember us that it's Scottish. I mean, remind you. I'm going to. I'm going to keep reminding you. By the way, it's Scottish. Oh, did you know it's Scottish? I'm just saying. His thirst to avenge his brother's death had overridden all intelligent thought. He told her how he'd grown lightheaded and weary while racing toward the loch, and that now believed he had somehow been drugged. He told her now he'd collapsed just outside the forest on the banks of the loch, how his limbs had locked, his eyes had closed as if weighted by heavy gold chains. He told her he felt his armor and weapons being removed, then symbols being painted on his chest, then felt nothing more until she had woken him. Then he told her of his family, of his brilliant and brightly father and their beloved housekeeper and substitute mother, Nell. He told her of his young priest, who whose nagging, fortune-telling mother was wont to chase him ceaselessly about the estate, trying to get a look at his palm. He forgot his sorrow for a time and regaled her with the tales of his childhood with Diogus. When he spoke of his family, her skeptical gaze had softened a bit, and she listened with marked fascination, laughing over the antics of Justin and his brother, smiling gently over the ongoing sparring between Sylvan and Nell. He dedicated from her wistful expression that even when her family had been alive, there'd not been much laughter and loving in her life. "Have you no brothers and sisters, lass?" he asked. She'd shaken her head. "My mother had fertility problems and had me late in life. After she had me, the doctor said she couldn't have any more." "Why have you not wed and had any of your own?" She shifted and averted her gaze. "I never found the right man." Nay, she'd not much had wait. Nay, she'd not had much pleasure in her life. He'd like the chance to change that. He'd like to make her eyes sparkle with happiness. He wanted Gwen Cassidy, and he wanted her to be her night man. Or right, I'm sorry. He wanted to be her right man. The mere scent of her as she walked by brought every inch of him to attention. He wanted her to become so familiar with his body that the pleasure he could give her with it, that a simple glance would make her limp with desire. He wanted to pass a fortnight uninterrupted in his bedchamber, exploring her hidden passion, unleashing the eroticism that simmered just beneath her surface. But it might never come to pass, because once he performed the ritual and she discovered what he was, that she'd be done with him, that he'd wait, and what he'd done to her, he would have every reason to despise him. She would have I'm sorry. Still, he had no other choice. Casting a worried glance at the arc in the moon against the black sky, he inhaled deeply, greedily, of the sweet Highland night air. The time was nearly upon them. "Let it rest, Gwen," he called. He was moved that she can refuse to give up. Mad though she might think him, she was still digging about the ruins. "Come join me in the stones," she beckoned. He wanted to spend what might be his last hour with her, close to the fire, holding her in his arms. His druthers were to strip off her clothes and bury himself inside of her, brand himself into her memory with what time he had left, but that seemed as likely as the tablets suddenly manifesting themselves beneath his hands. "Hey, Johnny Tash." "But we haven't found the tablets." She turned toward him, smudging dirt on her cheek when she pushed back her hair. "'Tis too late now, lass. The time is nearly upon us, and that tube of light," he gestures to her flashlight, "won't help us see what isn't there to be found. 'Twas a vain and foolish hope that we might be survived intact on the estate, if we hadn't found them yet. The next hour will accomplish naught. Come, spend it with me." He held out his arms. She'd slept within them last night, and he'd awakened to the lovely sight of her face, trusting and innocent in response. He'd kissed her full, lush lips, and when she awakened, sleep flushed, with crease marks on her cheek from being pressed into his wrinkled t-shirt, she'd felt a rush of tenderness he'd not felt for a woman before. Lust, ever at a boil within him when she was near, had simmered into a more intense complexity, complexly layered feeling, and he'd recognized that given time he could fall deeply in love with her, not merely ache to keep her in bed without respite, but develop a real and lasting emotion, equal parts passion, respect, and appreciation, the kind that bound a man and a woman together for life. She was everything that he wanted in a woman. Gwen trudged into the circle, clearly reluctant to give up when there was not even one stone unturned, another trait he admired in her. "Why won't you tell me what you plan to do?" All day she tried to coax it out of him, but he'd refused to tell her anything more than what they were looking for, 7 stone tablets inscribed with symbols. "I'd said I'd give you proof, and I will. A stunning, irrevocable amount of proof." The hours had dragged on as they searched, tossing rocks and rubble, and his hope had steadily faded with each broken chip of pottery, each time more memento of his dead clan. At one point futility had nearly overwhelmed him, and he'd sent her down to the village with a list of items to pick up so he could have time to think undistracted. During her absence he meditated upon the symbols, working through complex calculations, and derived his best guess at the last 3. A guess that would be put to the test in less than 1 hour. He was aiming for 2 weeks after his brother's death, plus 1 day. He was almost certain they were correct and believed that there was only a minute chance that the worst could happen. And if the worst happened, he had prepared her well and need only remind her what to say and do to restore him complete. Merged memory to the past version of himself, 'twas why he bid her memorize the spell. She picked up several jugs of water, along with flashlights, coffee, and food, and now sat beside him near the fire, cross-legged, cleaning her hands with dampened towels, emitting little sighs of pleasure as she scrubbed at her face with the tiny pads from her pack. While she freshened up, he broke open the stones he'd collected during their hike. Each Inside each was a core of brilliant dust, which he'd scraped carefully into a tin and blended it with water to form a thick paste. Paint rocks, she said, intrigued enough to pause her ablutions. She'd never seen one, but knew the ancients had used them to paint with. They were small and craggy, and deep in the center of dust formed over time that made brilliant colors when mixed with water. Hey, Monster Jam, how are you? Just got your message. Aye, 'tis what we call them as well, he said, rising to his feet. Gwen watched as he moved to one of the megaliths and after a moment's hesitation began etching a complex design of formulas and symbols. She narrowed her eyes, studying it. Parts of it seemed somehow familiar, yet alien, a perverted mathematical equation that danced just out of her reach. And there was little did that to her. Hey, Johnny Cash. A beat of nervous apprehension thudded in her chest, and she watched intently as he moved to the next stone, and then the third, and the fourth. On each of the stones he etched a different series of numbers and symbols upon their inner faces, pausing occasionally to glance up at the stars. The autumnal equinox, she reflected, was the time when the sun crossed the plains of the earth's equator, making night and day of approximately equal length all over the earth. Res- Researchers had long argued over the precise use of the standing stones. What was she about to find out their real purpose? She eyed the megaliths and pondered what she knew about the archaeoastronomy. When he finished sketching upon the 13th and final stone, her breath caught in her throat. Although she only recognized parts of it, he clearly stroked the symbol for infinity. If you don't know what the symbol of infinity is, that's what it looks like. It's like an 8 sideways. Most people have heard of it at least once in their life. Beneath it, the luminescent, the Mobius stripe, Aperion. What knowledge did he have of it? She scanned the 13 stones and felt the particular itchy sensation in her mind, as if epiphany was trying to burrow into her overwhelmed brain. Watching him, she was struck by a stunning possibility. Was it possible that he was smarter than she was? What was that madness? Was that his madness? Gorgeous and smart? Be still my beating heart. As he turned away from the last stone, she shivered. Physically, he was irresistible. He was wearing his original costume of plaid and armor again, having shed such trews that do not let a man hang properly. and an inner that cannot conceal an oyster knife. As soon as he'd waken that morning, hang properly indeed, she thought, gaze skipping over his kilt, mouth going dry as she imagined what was hanging beneath it. Was he in that seemingly permanent state of semi-arousal? She'd like to kiss him until there was nothing semi about it. Tired and booted, botted, tired and something. What monster jam? With effort, she dragged her gaze to his face. His sleek hair was wild, fall about his shoulders. He was the most intense, exciting, and erotic man that she had ever met. When she was around Justin McKelter, inexplicable things happened to her. When she looked at him, his powerful body, his chiseled jaw, the flashing eyes and sensual mouth, she heard Pan's distant pipes, and suffered an irresistible compulsion to tithe to Dionysus, the ancient god of wine and orgy. I'm probably saying that name wrong too. Dionysus. The tune was destructive, urging was seductive. I'm sorry. The tune was seductive, urging her to cast aside restraint, don to her crimson kitten thong, and dance barefoot for a dark, forbidding man who claimed he was a 16th century laird. He glanced back at her, and her gazes collided. She felt like a time bomb ready to explode, ticking, ticking. Her face must have been betrayed her feelings, because he inhaled sharply. His nostrils flared, his eyes narrowed, and he went quiet, with the perfect stillness of a mountain lion behind, before hurling itself at its prey. She swallowed. "What are you doing with those stones?" she forced herself to ask, flustered by the intensity of what she was feeling. "Don't you think it's time to tell me?" "I haven't told you all I can." His eyes were a cool slate, crystalline light that he usually danced within them, subdued. "You don't trust me. After all I've done to help, you still don't trust me." She didn't try to conceal that it hurt her feelings. "Oh, lass, I do not be thinking such. 'Tis merely that some things are forbidden." "Not really," he amended silently, but he simply couldn't risk revealing his plans yet, lest she abandon him. "Bullshit," she said, impatient with invasions. "You don't trust me. Nothing is forbidden." "I do trust you, lass. I'm trusting you far more than you know. With my life, possibly, even with my clan's very existence." "How am I supposed to believe in you when you won't confide in me?" "Ever the doubter, are you not, Gwen?" he chided. "Kiss me before I sketch the final symbols. For bonny fortune," he urged. Shards of crystal glittered in his eyes, reminding her that although sometimes he banked his passionate nature, it was always simmering just beneath the surface. Gwen started to speak, but he laid a finger to her lips. "Please, Les, just kiss me. No more words. There have been enough of them between us." He paused before adding quietly, "If you have aught to say to me, let your heart speak now." She took a deep breath. There was no question what her heart was saying. Earlier that afternoon, when she had gone down to the village, she dug her crimson thong out of her pack, and after washing up, had put it on. Then she peeled off her nicotine patch, preferring outright withdrawal without having to explain its presence on her body. She was not going to make love for the first time with a patch on. Besides, once she'd made the decision, A remarkable calm had settled over her. She knew what she was going to do. Truth be told, she'd probably known the moment he'd opened his eyes that she was going to give him her virginity. The past 2 days had been nothing more than her way of growing accustomed to the thought, so she would be less apprehensive when she finally did. She wasn't simply attracted to him. She was drawn to him on every level, mentally, emotionally, and physically. She wanted him in a way that had no rhyme or reason. She felt things when he spoke to her and touched her that originated from a unique place inside her. It no longer mattered to her that he might be mentally unbalanced. During the passage of the day, digging beneath him in the ruins of the castle while he talked of the various members of his clan, she realized that she was going to stick by him until he worked out whatever reality problems he was having. She really liked him. She wanted to know more about him. She began to respect him despite his delusions. If she had to check him into a hospital, hold his hand, and sit by his side until he recovered, she was going to do that. If she had to walk around Scotland for months clutching a photograph of him until she found someone who could identify him and shed heater. I want to be warm, but I don't want to die. Sick of these damn pop. I can't remember what it was. We've about had enough. We've had enough. She tucked her bangs behind her ear and looked at him levelly. Her voice hardly shook when she said, "Make love to me, Tristan." Mad or not, she wanted him to be her first lover, here and now on top of a mountain in the highlands, beneath a million stars, encircled by ancient stones. Perhaps making love had some kind of healing power. God knew she probably needed some healing too. His eyes flared, and he went perfectly still. "I did hear that, did I not?" he said carefully. "You did say that, I think you did. Or have I gone truly mad as you accused me of being?" "Make love to me, Justin," she repeated quietly. There was no tremor in her voice the second time. His silver eyes glittered. "Lass, you honor me." When he opened his arms, she leapt at him, and he swung her effortlessly into his embrace. Pulling her legs around his waist, they both gasped at the intensity of the contact. A current of desire sizzled between them, zapping them both to the core. With powerful strides, he backed her to the perimeter of the stones until her spine rested against one of the megaliths. He lowered his head and kissed her, grinding his hips against her, and when she cried out, he caught it with his tongue. "I've wanted you since the moment I saw you," he said roughly. "Me too," she confessed, with a breathless laugh. "Oh, lass, why didn't you tell me?" he asked, kissing her jaw, her cheeks, her nose, lashes, cradling her face with his hands. "Why did you resist? 3 days we could have been past doing this," he said, in a burr thickened by desire. "Not if we wanted to get your stones," she panted, wondering why he couldn't just shut up and kiss her hard on the mouth. Just shut up and kiss me, she said. He laughed and kissed her so hard that it unleashed the ferocity in her tiny frame. She'd seen movies where people made love slowly, sinuously wrapped around each other, but theirs was a mating of wildness. Given their propensity to argue heatedly, she hadn't expected their sex to be any less intense. She couldn't get enough of him. She wanted more tongue and more hands and more of his muscular ass. She wanted him naked against her body, wanting to feel him pounding into her. She'd waited all her life for this, and she was ready. Just looking at him made her wet. He tugged her shirt from her shorts and fumbled with her fly, kissing her urgently all the while. Your trousers, get 'em off, he said roughly. I can't. My legs are wrapped around you, she mumbled. And ow, your knife is poking my breast. Mmm, sorry. He nipped her lower lip and sucked at it hard. I must have put you down, lass, to get you naked. And 'tis needing you naked I am. But he didn't make any move to lower her, hostage, hostage to her luscious mouth nibbling at her wee hands clawing at his back. So put me down, McCelter, she panted a few minutes later against his mouth, desperate to feel his skin against hers. I have too many clothes on. I'm trying, he said, trailing kisses down her neck and scraping his velvety tongue back up, only to writhe at her lips again, a position he could hardly fail to take full advantage of. Don't put me down, she whimpered when he stopped kissing her. Her lips felt naked and cold without him, her body bereft. The minute her toes touched the ground, she reached impatiently for his clothing, and he dived for her shorts at the same moment, cursing when he bumped his jaw on her head and she got tangled up in his hair. She fumbled with his hair and then found her way to the leather bands around his chest, but was unable to fathom how he fastened them. Brushing her hands aside, he tugged her shirt over her head, then stared at her bra. He touched the lacy fabric with fascination. Lass, show me your breasts. Be quit of this thing, lest I tear it to shreds in my haste. She popped off the front clasp swiftly and slipped it off. The cool air teased her nipples into puckered crusts, and he drew a sharp inhalation of breath. For a moment, he didn't seem to be able to move, just stood and stared. You have splendid breasts, lass, he purred, cupping the plump mounds. Splendid, he repeated stupidly, and she almost laughed. Men loved breasts. Any shape or form, they just loved them. Ain't that right? And he was certainly loving hers. He palmed them, lifting and squeezing, and with a husky groan he buried his face into her breasts, rubbing back and forth before drawing a nipple deep into his mouth. Gwen panted softly when he scattered scorching kisses over her breasts. She twisted and turned in his arms, wanting his mouth there and there and there, telling him with her body just how and where she needed him. His fingers worked at her shorts with little success, and grunting with frustration, he tugged at her zipper, but succeeded only in jamming it off the track. Encountering similar resistance with his costume, she moaned frantically. She wanted skin against skin, and she needed it. Every last inch, pressed slick and intimate. Oh, just do your own and I'll do mine, she snapped, impeding desire, making her downright testy. She needed him naked now. Daniel. Hi, Daniel. Welcome, welcome. Christ, McKelter, Gwen breathed, stunned. 6.5 feet of sculpted naked warrior stood there before her. Oh, wait, I skipped a shape. Nope, I skipped it. I'm sorry. He looked as relieved as she felt by the efficient solution as she tugged and twisted at her zipper, then kicked off her shorts. He removed his plaid and tossed knives left and right, doffing his axe and sword and finally shucking his leather armor. He stood up straight, tossing his long hair over his shoulders, and looked at her. There. Christ, McAllister, Gwen breathed, stunned. 6.5 feet of sculpted naked warrior stood before her, unself-conscious in his nudity, proud in fact, and well he should be. He was raw and male and powerful beyond compare, and it had certainly not been a sock or 20 in his jeans. He was breathtaking, and he had a remarkable amount of mass that she had not been factoring into her equation of why she had been orbiting him, but she certainly would be in the future. It explained a great deal. His eyes drifted over her breasts, down her belly, and then lit on her kitten thong, when he made a strangled sound. I thought that it was some strange ribbon to restrain your hair. 'Twas why I put it in your pallet that night, thinking you might plait it before you slept. But alas, I prefer it there, he said roughly. 'Tis wise you did not tell me that was beneath your trousers, for I would have walked around all day thinking of removing it with my tongue. He likes my thong, she thought, beaming. She'd always known that if she'd picked the right man to pluck her cherry, he'd appreciate her good taste. Slipping to his knees before her, he proceeded to do as he threatened, lifting the strap of her thong away from her smooth curve of her hip with his teeth, and licking the sensitive skin beneath it. He tugged the silks down with little nips curving his tongue beneath it. She dug her fingers into his shoulders as he licked again and again, building resonance beneath her skin. He sucked on her sensitive nub through the silk, making her arch against him, begging for more. Every inch she bared and he swept with a hot stroke of his tongue, alternating tiny love bites. His calloused hands glided up her thighs, and the delicious friction created by his rough palms against her smooth skin awakened erogenous zones she never knew she had. Her knees trembled, and she clutched his muscled shoulders for support. Lovely you are, he purred, slipping his hands between her thighs and kneading and tasting her. I do not know which part of you to taste first. Driston, she moaned, pressed against him. What, Gwen? Do you want me? God, yes. Do you want me when you saw me in those blue trousers? Did you want me then, too? Yes. Do you feel the heat when I touch you? Does it hit you like a thunderbolt, too? Yes. He stripped off her thong and rose to his feet. He drank in the sight of her nude body for a long moment before dragging her into his arms. The long wait is finally here. What book is this? Kiss of the Highlander. It's a romance novel by Karen Marie Moning, if you're wondering what book I'm reading. Yeah, Yes, this is all romance novels. You guys should check this out. All romance novels are like this. All of them. Yeah. You got you got porn hidden in the library. That little old lady sitting over there in the corner reading a book. She's got Justin on her mind. Just saying. Anyway, they both cried out as skin met skin, stunned by the intensity of the contact. Sizzling where they touched, he kissed her deeply, his tongue hot and hungry, plundering her mouth. She arched her back, rubbing her breasts against him. When he cupped his hands beneath her bottom, she clasped her hands behind his neck and wrapped her legs tightly around him, so his erection was firmly trapped in the V of her thighs. She squirmed, wanting him inside of her right now. But either he wasn't cooperating or she was too clumsy to angle them into the right position, which she rued, given her inexperience, was possible. But it didn't seem that he was being particularly helpful, she thought, mullishly, breaking their kiss long enough to look at him. His silvery gaze was wicked and cockily amused. Are you torturing me? My pace, lass. You're the one who said no and wasted days. We might have done this yesterday when you stuffed me into those torturous troughs, and later that afternoon, and later that night, and this morning, and she tried to reply. He kissed her so hard she forgot that she was going to say. He rocked himself against her, mimicking sex, gliding back and forth in the slick V of her thighs. Millions of tiny nerve endings screamed for more. Well, if he won't, I will. She knew better than most people that forces of nature should not be resisted or subdued. She twisted against him, rubbing herself wantonly, pushing herself to the peak. As her soft panting became more frantic, Tristan broke the kiss and looked at her. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes brilliant and wild, her lips kiss bruised and parted. Thus is less. Take your pleasure. He was riveted by her unbashing hunger for him. She was making him hotter and harder with every insistent thrust of her hips. If he wasn't careful, he'd spill without ever entering her. He doubted a woman had ever desired him so intensely. She whimpered as she came, she purred, and she rubbed against him like a love-starved kitten. Yes, he breathed, flooding with pure male possessive triumph. When her shoulders subsided and she relaxed against him, he lowered her to the ground on his plaid, then sat back on his knees, gazed at her for a long moment, long enough that she began to squirm, and it wrought havoc upon his fleeting control. She arched her back, r- raising her breasts towards him, her nipples dark berries begging to be suckled. Touch me, she whispered. Oh, lass, I'll touch you, he promised. He nudged her legs wider, then drank in the sight of her, lying in wait for him, her full breasts swollen from his kisses, her thighs open and slick with her desire. He ran his hand up the inside of her thighs, across her woman's wetness, and then down the other leg, once, twice, and half a dozen times, lingering between her thighs, flicking her sensitive nub, until she was arching her hips up from the plaid. I'm going to choke you as you've not been choked before, lass. Gwen was quite certain of that, having never been trooped before. Promises, promises, Knockelto, she provoked. A woman could die of old age before you got around to it. I used to have a party trick. This whole romance novel that could open always the love scene. Yeah, I bet. I bet. I bet, Daniel. His eyes flew wide in surprise, and then he laughed. A husky laugh, full of dark eroticism. Finally, she purred. When his shoulder muscles bunching sleekly, he covered her body with his. Have you no sense at all that you would provoke me? I'm twice your size, you know, he murmured against her ear. So show me something I don't already know, she gasped when he nibbed her earlobe. Like this? He asked, shifting himself between her thighs. Or like this, as he rubbed the head of his cock back and forth and back again in her slip folds. Gwen melted as he spoke to her, then in a language she'd never heard, but knew it was a tribute from the husky admiration in his voice. The strange accents made her wild, and she purred compliments against her heated skin. She half wondered if he was ensorceling her, because the more he spoke in his foreign accents, the hotter she got. Or perhaps it was a smoky, deep voice in the way his hands moved over every inch of her body, as if memorizing the subtleties of her each plane and hollow. He devoted lavish attention to her breasts, squeezing them, plumping them, and fondling them until she was nearly devious with need, hovering at the brink of another orgasm. He braced himself on the forearms and suckled each nipple, moving his head back and forth, chafing her with his shadowed beard. Just when she thought one couldn't take an erotic teasing any more, he would turn his attention to the other. He kissed her he kissed her breasts and the sides of her breasts, the warm soft place beneath them, pushed them together and kissed the plump cleavage, dragging his tongue roughly between them, then returned to her hard nipples and took them alternately with his teeth, nipping and suckling and drawing her into his mouth. She nearly screamed from the exquisite pleasure of it. He trailed kisses over her ribs, down her abdomen, and then gliding his tongue across her belly, playfully flicking into her belly button. Then, suddenly, he dragged his tongue across her swollen bud, and she cried out. There's my lass, he purred, burying his face between her thighs. The man has a magic tongue, she thought, writhing beneath him. He cupped his hands beneath her bottom, raised her to his mouth, and Gwen filled the night with tiny whimpers as he kissed and licked her, and then plunged his tongue deep inside of her. As his hot tongue stroked in places that had never been touched before, she came in spasms, and he lapped her as she shuddered over and over again. Then, just when she thought it was over, he gently nipped her, wringing a tinier series of spasms from her trembling body. Resonance. I am crystal and I am shattering, she thought feverishly, as she arched her hips against him, crying out. Justin growled and pressed himself against the ground. He wanted this to last as long as it could, wanting to pleasure her like no other man ever had. Gritting his teeth, he pressed himself against the flat, remaining perfectly still, trying to convince his cock that he needed to wait just a bit longer, because at least he could give her this. At least he could have this perfect moment with her, if naught else. She whimpered softly as the spasms stopped, and he gently lapped her again, playfully, warning her that she would have many more peaks of pleasure before he was through with her. She was so beautiful and open to him. She was the most sensuous woman he'd ever met in his life, every inch of her body sensitive to his caresses. And although he'd bedded scores of bawdy women in his life, none had nudged him past the edge of reason until now. His stomach was shaking from the intensity of his desire, and his cock was so hard it was painful. His breathing sounded harsh to his own ears. The beat of his own heart was a thunder of 100 horses. The blood boiled in his veins, and reality narrowed down to just one thing. Her. He could wait no longer. He rained kisses up the gentle swell of her stomach, over her breasts, and dragged the edge of his teeth back and forth across her nipples. Positioning himself beneath her legs, he did not take her immediately, but kissed her thoroughly, in a kiss of demand and dominance and of raw passion. Possession. Tell me, he demanded. She didn't play shy or coy, thing he liked. She let him read her hunger in her face and her expressive stormy eyes, hiding nothing. But would she speak of her desires? Would she be audacious and whisper words to him that would tell him how to fulfill her wildest needs? Tell me, he insisted. His wee Gwendolen said a thing to him that he'd never heard a woman say before, neither high-born nor whore, and the baseness of her words slammed into him as if he'd swallowed a double hose of a rum lust potion. He'd never had a woman say that to him. They used gentler words, but what Gwen asked of him was exactly what he wanted to do. Their attraction to each other was primitive and went far beyond reason. If she could voice such raw desires, what more might she confront bravely? Who and what he was? Might she possess such courage? She lay beneath him, shivering with desire. Her lips glistened in the moonlight, wet from his kisses, and realized he was falling for her harder than a mighty oak cleaved by into by a lightning bolt would crash into the forest floor. He plunged inside her and stopped. Not by choice. Oh, nay, not by choice, but because something was in the way. Oh, just push, she cried. I know it's going to hurt at first. Just do it. Get it over with. He was stunned. Fragments of thoughts collided in his head. She was untouched by any man. How could this woman have survived a maiden so long? Are the men in her century utter fools? Then, she chose no other, but she chose me? What a gift! A more noble man might have backed off. A more noble man who knew that even a minute possibly existed that he might disappear that night and would surely have refused. But there was something about Gwen Cassidy that drove him far past nobility. He wanted her, by fair means or foul, and if the worst happened tonight, and the loving between them might make her more able to face what she may have to confront, mayhap help her complete all the things he might need her to do, and mayhap he could entertain the outlandish dream. She could be persuaded to find a happy future in his past, for like it or not, the only future she was going to have after tonight was in his past. He would make it up to her, he vowed. Her happiness would be the first priority. He would give her anything she wanted, heap her with mountains of gifts, attention, and devotion as befitting a queen. He would wait on her hand and foot, and mayhap loving could work out the uncertainties in his plan that no amount of careful and cautious orchestration could accomplish. I may be little, she coaxed softly when he hesitated, but I'm tougher than you think. And she repeated the previous request that had sent all the blood in his body rushing to his groin. Inflamed, he plunged through the barrier, claiming her. Yes, she screamed, and he drank her cry into his mouth, kissing her savagely, pushing deep within her. She matched his urgent rhythm, and although he knew it had caused her pain, her desire quickly surpassed the tearing of her head. Maiden head. Yeah, I'm gonna get banned. I already know it. I don't think you're supposed to talk about sex on here, are you? Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Stay hydrated, my friends. Stay hydrated. Don't be thirsty. I'm sorry, I had to say it. Y'all are probably like, hurry up, finish. All right. He gave himself to her with an intensity that he had not given a woman before, burying himself so deep inside of her that he thought he must be touching the lip of her womb, then gliding out slowly, only to thrust again. His entire world, his every breath, a heartbeat, was focused on the woman in his arms. Slipping her legs over his shoulders, he angled himself to drive back into her. He took the move achingly slowly, knowing how weak she was and that he would stretch her to her limits. But he needed to be so deep inside of her that he no longer knew where he began and she ended. He slid into her inch by inch, his body straining from such sweet torture. Tristan, she cried, tossing her head from side to side, tangling her silky hair. He suckled her nipples as he withdrew and returned, and when he felt her contract around him, he clamped his teeth lightly on a nipple and tugged. He drove himself into her hard and fast and deep over and over until he was nearly mindless with savage need. "Oh, lassie," he said roughly, caught up in her spasms, "I canna ride out this storm again." And as he thrust inside her so hard it nearly hurt him, his husky voice mingled in her sweet cries. They peaked in perfect rhythm, each shuddering contraction of her body drawing forth his seed. He purred to her as he came in an ancient tongue he knew she wouldn't understand. He said foolish things, heartfelt things, deep and weighty things he could never acknowledge otherwise. He called her his goddess of the moon and praised her courageous spirit and fire. He asked her for babies. Christ, he talked like a fool. Gwen shuddered against him, listening to his strange accents, and somehow she knew that every word he uttered was praise. When he finally stilled against her, she stroked his back and shoulders, marveling, buoyant, elated, and sated beyond compare. "You are beautiful, lass," he whispered, brushing his lips back and forth over hers tenderly. She squealed when he thumped inside her, a final flexing from their love play. "Did I hurt you, sweet Gwen?" he asked, with such concern in his eyes it touched her heart. "Oh, a bit," she confessed, "but no more than I expected after seeing that sock that you have there." He smiled, his eyes dancing. "I told you it was God given. You'd hear none of it." He sucked at her lower lip. I didn't mean to hurt you, lass. I fear I was without sense for a time there. No more than I. I think I said something really bad. She worried, nibbling her lip. It aroused me immensely, he growled. Never had I had a woman say such things to me, and it made me hard as a stone. You are always hard, McKelton. Don't think I don't see the permanent bulge in your clothing. I know, he said smudgely. Your glance drift there often. He sobered suddenly. He sobered suddenly. But now I know why you were naysaying me, Gwen. Why you did not tell me you had known no man before me. She closed her eyes and sighed. I was afraid you were going to say no, she finally admitted. I'm sure you would make love. I wasn't sure you would make love to a virgin. Make love, she said. She saved herself from all the others but chosen to give herself to him. You care for me, he thought, hoping she would say the words. He was disappointed when she didn't, but in her touch, her hands tracing gentle circles on his chest, he felt a tenderness that meant much to him. She had given him her maidenhood. How long is this chapter? Yeah, like 15 minutes. Okay with Twitch, but not sure other platforms. It's literature, and we can talk about the style and choice of vocabulary in an excruciatingly detailed review. Okay, fair enough. I will accept that answer, Daniel. I mean, are you enjoying it at least? I know I am. Whew, buddy. All right. I think I skipped a page here. Okay. I don't know. I'm sure Facebook has probably already muted me. And I don't know about YouTube, but oh well. He felt himself hardening again, moved by the depth of her gift, although he hadn't given her proof that he wasn't telling the truth. She had given of herself freely to him, that which she had given to no other man. You need a cold shower, John? You're loving it? Awesome. I'm glad. Giving you some culture in your life. There's more than one way to do things. Remember that. All right. She'd given herself freely to him, that which she had given to no other man. She had feelings for him, and he was sure of it, as sure as he was that Gwen Cassidy didn't give of herself lightly. She'd honored him in so many ways. There was no question in his mind she was the one for him, the woman he'd wanted all of his life. And so what if he had to come 500 years into the future to find her? He would give her the words and begin the Druid binding, and mayhap in a few hours, if all was well, she might freely give the words back to him. And if it doesn't go well? He shrugged mentally. If all didn't go well and he didn't survive tonight, the 16th century version of him would find her druggingly irresistible, even before she had said the spell to merge their memories. He could see no harm in that. Doubting it would come to pass anyway. She had given him a precious gift. This was all that he had to offer her in return, the gift of his eternal love. He placed the palm of his right hand on her chest over her heart, the palm of his left above his, and looked deep into her eyes. When he spoke, his voice was low and firm. Let me try to do this. If aught be lost, 'twill my honor for years. If one must be forsaken, 'Twill be my soul for yours. Should death come anon, 'twill be my life for yours. He drew a deep breath and finished it, completing the spell that would haunt him for life. I am given. He shuddered, but he felt an irrevocable bond take root within him, a bond that could never be severed. He was now connected to her by gossamer strands of awareness. Were he to walk into a room of people, he would be drawn to her side. Were he to enter a village, he'd know if she was in it. Emotion welled up within him, and he struggled to hold it back, astonished by the intensity. Feeling crashed over him, feelings he had never imagined. Sorry about the helicopters. I'm right by an airport. Oh, the seat is so uncomfortable, just so you know. She was so beautiful, made 1,000 times more so by his having opened himself completely to her. Her eyes were wide. What did you mean by that? She asked, with a shaky little laugh. He had spoken that in a strange voice again, the one that held resonance of a dozen voices. The soft rumble of spring thunder, it had sounded terribly romantic, a little serious and scary, too. His words had been almost like a living thing, brushing her with warm fingers. She had a nagging sensation that there was something she should say back to him, but had no idea what or why. He smiled Igni- he smiled enigmatically. Oh, I get it. It's another one of those things. That will become clear in time, he finished for her. I. It's rather like I will protect you should the need ever arise. It's more like you're mine forever. Should you agree and give me the words back, and now I am yours forever, whether you agree or not. It was a risky thing he'd done, of a certain because if she never agreed, Justin McKelter would ache endlessly for her. His heart trapped by the binding spell, he would sense her eternally, would love her eternally, but should she one day choose to freely give the words back, the bond would intensify 1,000-fold. He could live for such a hope. Her eyes widened further, and she felt him stiffen beside her. Again? Facebook Black Op copters coming to get you. Bring it. Bring it. Bring it. I'm feeling feisty. As long as you're in uniform and you're holding a gun. Bring your batons and your tasers and cuffs and all. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes breaking the law ain't such a bad thing if you got a hot cop to come and get you. Just saying. Anyway, so I have a story to that, but I'll tell you once we're done with this chapter, okay? And I'll leave it at that. Give you a little bonus at the end. I have a story to tell. So anyway, so again, are you too tender? He asked gently. She arched her brow. I told you, I'm tougher than you think, she said, running the tip of her pink tongue over his lip. He groaned and caught it between his lips. Then, "Aye, lass," and again and again, he said, as he began to glide back and forth inside her. We McKelters were bred for stamina, and since he knew she was the disbelieving type, a woman dis- disinclined to accept anything but firm proof, he proceeded to give her hard evidence of his claim, telling her with his body all the words he so longed to say. Yes, immediately. So now we are on chapter 10, and I'm going to leave it at that for tonight. But I do have a story to tell you. And for those of you who live in the Statesville, North Carolina area, and he's probably going to end up finding out about this and it's going to embarrass that little shit out of me. But it's okay. When I had my wreck, you're very welcome, dear. When I had my wreck, I was given several tickets. But because I was in ICU for so long, I ended up missing the court date. When I got out, I was arrested on a warrant while I was still in a walker and had to go to jail for my warrant. The officer who arrested me at my house was like 7 foot tall, very built, gorgeous man. Gorgeous. Sweetheart of a man, too. Really sweet. He wasn't mean or nothing. And he helped me to the car and he put the cuffs on me, and I was just like, come to find out, yes, I was very doe eyed. I was very doe eyed. I flirted the whole way to jail. And so I come to find out his name is Chris Robbins. Christopher Robbins, Winnie the Pooh. Oh my god, that made my life so much better. To this very day, I will always mess around and tell the other officers, go tell my Pooh Bear that I said hi. And they are like, what? And I was like, yeah, Chris Robbins. Yep. I found a Pooh Bear onesie at the store the other day, and I wanted to wrap it up and bring it to the police station and give it to him just to fuck with him. He was probably like, this bitch better leave me for this. She's crazy. She's crazy. Leave me alone, woman. He's probably married. I have no idea. But like, yeah. Mm-hmm. You're in Monroe? Hi. Hi, local neighbor. I got arrested 3 times. I actually called up the police station because I accidentally left my keys to my house and my cars in the back of his truck. And when I got arrested one time, so I was arrested on warrants for all three. All three. The first one was because I missed the court date. The other two were for truancy from last year from COVID. So I'm still dealing with that. But he came to the house and he's like, and it was like a year or so later, right? And he looks at me and he's like, don't I know you? And I was like, hey, how are you? I was excited to get like, yes, I did. Yes, I did. I said, so do you like honey thoughts? And he's such a sweet guy too. I feel so bad. Like, but yeah, that's my Pooh Bear. And I will fuck with him if I see him on the road. I'll wave at him and be like, hey. He's probably like, oh my god, please just make it stop. But yeah, I got into his truck for the second time I got arrested. And I got in his truck and I was just like, my hands were cuffed and I was just like, kind of like, like a little girl. Like, I don't know. But yeah, we were talking for a while and like he grew up kind of like the same situation as me and like had gone through all these hard times and stuff like that. It was so cool. Like, I don't know. It was just really cool. And then the third time when I got arrested, he had brought me, and I left my keys in the back of his truck. And I didn't do this on purpose. Like, if I had thought clearly, I probably would have. But I called the police station. I said, you know, Officer Robbins had just arrested me, and I accidentally left the keys in the back of his truck. Can you turn them around and bring, like, tell him to come back? He came back. So I got to see him 4 times in the past year. Yeah, I was excited. I was like, so, you know, you got to do the little, like, leaning over thing, like in the cuffs, Like, so, how long you been in office for? Like, what you do with that taser later? Yes, I am. I'm weird. Like, I'm a very dominant type personality, and I legit, like, flat out will flirt the fuck with you if I like you. Like, yes, I actually asked my husband to marry me when I was married. I'm divorced now, but yeah. Yes, very blatant. I'm very blatant. You will not know that I like you. Like, if I know for a fact that I'm probably gonna have absolutely no chance in hell with you because you're like 17,000 layers above me right now. Like, you know, he's fucking gorgeous. Like, he should be a model. No joke. So he may be the only person he has arrested that pulled out her own handcuffs and my own taser and my own baton and my own whip and everything. It puts people off sometimes. Yeah, it does. It does. And same thing for guys. Sometimes it puts a girl off too. You got to kind of know. You kind of sense those boundaries, though. You can tell by like the uh, body language and stuff. Sometimes. I mean, I don't really flirt that much anymore, but you know, I'm almost 40. I've been single for a long time. I don't even care anymore. But I'm just saying I did. As of last year. Yeah, if I met him and I was just like, hi. Yeah, that's never gonna happen. That's forever gonna be a fantasy in my mind. Like, never gonna happen. And Chris Robbins, if you're listening to this right now, because I just like found out that I could add you on Snapchat. Um, I'm sorry. I imagine going out and running red lights. Oh, honey, I got 13 tickets in 2 weeks. 13 tickets in 2 weeks. Yeah. Uh-huh. Trying to figure out his schedule. No, I'm just kidding. I was actually getting harassed by a state trooper, believe it or not. Um, at the time, my tags were bad, and I didn't have the money to get new tags and pay for whatever it was that I needed to pay for. Yeah, 13 tickets. And believe it or not, this state trooper sat at the end of my exit for where my house is. So I would come home on the interstate, and there was no other way to get home. So I would go down the interstate exit and turn to go towards my house. And he knew where I lived and where I worked. And he knew every single day that I was going to be coming down that way because there's no other way to get to my house at that point. So, and this is when I learned that cleavage does not get you out of a ticket ever. It gets you an invitation to go to a church with him and his wife and kids. So, and a ticket. So, um, but yeah, he sat there and he waited every single day for 2 weeks and gave me a ticket every single day for the same exact thing. Same exact thing, which is that you're not allowed to get a certain amount of tickets or whatever it is. I don't know. They have to give you a certain amount of time to get shit straight. I don't know. So I brought a whole stack of tickets, and the last one he gave me was a warning ticket, and that's where he fucked up. Well, I mean, he fucked up to begin with, but I brought all those stacks to court with me on the final court date because they finally put all of the same. They were all on like the same date or something like that, and I brought the stack, and I was like, "This is harassment. This hasn't even been 2 weeks, like 10 days or something, and I got 13 tickets in 10 days." And he's been sitting in the same exact spot every single day, knowing and pulling me over at the same time every single day. This is harassment. And I ended up getting dropped. I was married once to a Nazarene priest, church pianist. Churches are dens of freaky people. The whole world is full of freaky people. There's a very rare few that are not. Very rare few. And those people should be cherished beyond recognition. Because when you're willing to not go out there and put it out into the world, just like in the book, that's a gift. It's a gift. At the very core of all of us, that's all we really ever want is someone to be there solely for us. So, but yeah, you do what you gotta do to make you happy. I mean, if you're into all kinds of stuff, more power to you. Because I'm not gonna lie, I'm a freak, but it is what it is, you know. Yep, I agree. Well, I hope that you enjoyed. Finally, the good parts, Wolfie. You're right. Finally. Um, and John, I hope you have a nice cold shower here in a few minutes because I know you're probably gonna need it. I hope Pooh Bear don't hear this damn stream. Dude, I would have climbed that mountain. I would have climbed that tree and took out all the limbs going down. I should follow. This was fun. I hope you do. I do this every night at 10 p.m. So if you'd like to join me, I'll read chapter 10 tomorrow. Sometimes we read directly. Sometimes we get stuck in a chat session for 2 hours, and I only read 7 pages. That was the other day. But I do. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed it a lot, like a lot. And so yeah, finally getting to the good spots. I know that there's going to be more of those sections in here because they haven't even gotten to the point where it's like the day. It's like right before the day. So I'm wondering what's going to happen tomorrow, like when he finally has the chance to do whatever it is that he needed to do, and like how the reaction is going to be, and like what's going to happen. I mean, is he going to take him with her back to like the? I'm wondering that. I'm wondering if her connection with him is now like officiated or whatever, and I'm wondering if he's going to take her back in time with him because he started talking about that. At first, he was worried because he was like, "Oh, I'm going to lose her," but now he's talking about like, "Oh, back then, if I had met her back then." So now I'm wondering if he's going to take her back in time because she's never been back then. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out tomorrow. Feel free to join my other streams. I stream live at 10 a.m., 5 p.m., and 10 p.m. daily Eastern Standard Time on this site, and then on my OnlyFans I do a 1 p.m. For subscribers only. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, OnlyFans, FetLife, Twitter, Twitch, Discord, and then like some other stuff I can't remember. TikTok, all those. I'm on all of them. So I hope y'all have a great night, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow morning bright and early for, I think it's what, Workout Wednesday? Yeah, I'll be cutting up trees. If I can get the chainsaw back, because it's at the shop right now. So if I can get the saw back, we'll be cutting up trees. If not, I'll be doing it with an axe. Yay! So, hope you all have a great night. And until I see you guys again, try your best to behave. Good night.